The gravel crunched beneath my rental car's tires as I pulled into the sprawling driveway of Uncle Robert's estate in Potomac, Maryland. The September air hung thick with humidity, and thunderclouds gathered on the horizon, matching my mood perfectly. After 28 years of military service, I'd faced Taliban fighters, navigated political minefields in Washington, and commanded thousands of soldiers. Yet somehow, the prospect of this family reunion made my palms sweat more than any combat mission ever had. I sat in the car for a moment, watching relatives I hadn't seen in years mill about the manicured lawn. The Brennan family reunion, an annual tradition I'd missed for the better part of 2 decades. Not by choice at first, but eventually, the invitations had stopped coming altogether. "You can do this, Sarah," I muttered to myself, checking my appearance in the rearview mirror. My auburn hair, now streaked with premature silver from years of stress, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. I'd chosen civilian clothes, jeans, and a button-down shirt, hoping to blend in. The last thing I wanted was to appear like I was flaunting my military career. As I stepped out of the car, the humid air hit me like a wall. I grabbed the store-bought potato salad from the passenger seat, a pathetic contribution. I knew, but I'd been in town less than 48 hours and barely had time to shop, let alone cook. The walk to the backyard felt like a military march toward an uncertain objective. Children ran past, their laughter piercing the air, while adults clustered in small groups, beer bottles and wine glasses in hand. The smell of barbecue wafted through the air, mixing with the sweet scent of Aunt Margaret's famous apple pie. I spotted Uncle Robert first, the self-proclaimed patriarch of the Brennan clan since Grandpa died 10 years ago. He stood near the grill, holding court with my other uncles, David, the investment banker, Michael, the successful real estate developer, and Thomas, who'd inherited the family construction business. All 4 of them in their 60s now, accomplished in their own right, and all sharing the same opinion of their youngest niece. Robert's eyes found mine across the yard. I saw the flicker of recognition, followed immediately by something else, dismissal, maybe even disdain. He turned back to his brothers without acknowledgement. The snub shouldn't have hurt. I'd prepared myself for this. But preparation and reality were different beasts entirely. "Sarah? Is that really you?" I turned to find my cousin Lisa approaching, her expression a mixture of surprise and genuine warmth. At least someone seemed happy to see me. "Hey, Lisa." I accepted her hug, grateful for the lifeline. "How have you been?" "Good, good. Busy with the kids." She gestured to 2 teenagers absorbed in their phones at a nearby picnic table. "I can't believe you came. When Mom said you'd RSVP'd, I thought she was joking." "Why would that be a joke?" I asked, though I knew the answer. Lisa's face flushed. "You know how they are, especially Uncle Robert. He still talks about, well, you know." I knew. The family meeting 20 years ago when I'd announced I was joining the Army instead of accepting the junior position at Uncle Thomas's construction firm. The words still echoed. "Throwing your life away. Wasting your potential. Too stubborn for your own good. You'll be back in 6 months. Begging for help." 6 months had turned into 28 years. I'd never begged for help, and I'd never been welcomed back. Where should I put this? I held up the potato salad, desperate to change the subject. "Oh, the food table's over there." Lisa pointed toward a long table laden with homemade dishes that put my store-bought contribution to shame. "Come on, I'll walk with you." As we crossed the yard, I caught fragments of conversation. Normal family talk, golf games, stock portfolios, vacation homes, whose kid got into which Ivy League school. I'd spent the last month in a forward operating base in Afghanistan, finalizing the withdrawal of troops under my command. The contrast was jarring. "So what are you doing now?" Lisa asked, as I found a spot for my sad little container among the impressive spread. "Still in the Army?" "Recently retired, actually." I kept my voice neutral. "Just figuring out what's next." "Oh." She seemed unsure how to respond. In our family, retirement meant golf courses and Mediterranean cruises, not starting over at 46. "Well, that must be nice. Having free time." I mean, before I could respond, Uncle David's voice carried across the yard. "Waste of taxpayer money if you ask me. Military's bloated enough as it is. We need businessmen making those decisions, not career bureaucrats playing soldier." My jaw tightened. Lisa touched my arm. "Just ignore him. You know how he gets after a few beers." But I couldn't ignore the way the conversation shifted when I approached any group. Voices lowered, topics changed, circles closed. I found myself standing alone more often than not, nursing a warm beer and wondering why I'd put myself through this. An hour passed like a deployment, slow, uncomfortable, and filled with the constant awareness that I didn't belong. I was considering making my excuses and leaving when Aunt Margaret appeared at my elbow. "Sarah, dear." Her smile was thin, perfunctory. "How nice of you to come. Though I must say, we were surprised to hear from you after all this time." "I was in the area," I lied. "Thought it was time to reconnect." She looked me up and down, taking in my simple clothes, the lack of wedding ring, the military bearing I couldn't quite shake. "Still single, I see. Such a shame. You were such a pretty girl. All that time in the military. Well, it does things to a woman, doesn't it?" The condescension dripped like honey, sweet and cloying. I opened my mouth to respond, though with what, I wasn't sure, when Uncle Robert's voice boomed across the gathering. "All right, everyone. Time for the family photo." The annual tradition. Everyone gathered on the sprawling back deck, arranging themselves by family unit. I hung back, unsure where to position myself, until Lisa waved me over to stand with her family. "Everyone squeeze in," Robert commanded from his position at the center. "And Sarah, maybe stand toward the back? You're a bit tall." "A bit tall." Not, "Hey niece I haven't seen in years, come stand with the family." Just a logistical problem to be solved. I moved to the back row, feeling every inch the outsider. "Hey, Uncle Robert," called out my cousin James, David's son. "Shouldn't we wait for Christopher? He texted that he's running late from the hospital." "Of course." Robert's face lit up. "Can't have the family photo without our star surgeon. Everyone relax for a minute." They'd wait for Christopher. But when I'd texted that I was running late from the airport, I'd gotten a curt response. "Dinner's at 5. Don't be late." I stepped away from the group, needing air that didn't smell like judgment and disappointment. The storm clouds had moved closer, and the wind picked up, rustling through the oak trees that bordered the property. My phone buzzed. A text from General Morrison, my former commanding officer. "Hope the family thing is going well. Remember, you've led battalions into battle. You can handle a few stubborn relatives." If only it were that simple. In battle, the enemies were clear, the objectives defined. Here, I was fighting ghosts of old arguments and the weight of expectations I'd never met. Quite the gathering. I turned to find Uncle Thomas approaching, beer in hand. Of all my uncles, he'd been the least hostile over the years, though that wasn't saying much. "It is," I agreed carefully. He stood beside me, looking out over the assembled family. "You know, Robert's still bitter about the construction job. He'd lined up that position especially for you." "That was 28 years ago, Uncle Thomas." "Robert holds grudges like precious stones." He took a swig of beer. "What he doesn't understand is that not everyone's meant for the family business. Hell, if I'd had a choice at your age." He trailed off, then shook his head. "Well, no use dwelling on what-ifs." "I suppose not. Still." He glanced at me sideways. "You could have kept in touch. A phone call now and then. Christmas cards. Something." The accusation stung because it held truth. After the first few years of rejected overtures, I'd stopped trying. It was easier to focus on my career, on the soldiers under my command who actually wanted me around. "Communication goes both ways," I said quietly. "That it does." He finished his beer. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you came. Even if—" A sound cut through the air, distant at first, then growing louder. The distinctive thump-thump-thump of helicopter rotors. Everyone looked up, shielding their eyes against the late afternoon sun. "What the hell?" Uncle Robert muttered. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, military green against the darkening sky. Not just any helicopter, a UH-60 Blackhawk, the kind I'd flown in countless times. It circled once, low enough that the downdraft sent napkins flying and knocked over empty cups. "Is that landing here?" Someone shouted over the noise. It was. The pilot brought the Blackhawk down on the expansive lawn with practiced precision, the rotors kicking up a small tornado of grass clippings and fallen leaves. The entire reunion stood frozen, watching this surreal interruption to their genteel gathering. The rotors powered down, and the side door slid open. A figure in Army combat uniform stepped out, Major Jennifer Hayes, whom I recognized from Joint Base Andrews. She moved with purpose across the lawn, her boots leaving impressions in the manicured grass. Every eye followed her progress, including mine. This wasn't how military contacts typically worked. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Major Hayes stopped in front of me and saluted sharply. "General Brennan, ma'am. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a situation." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children had stopped playing, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "General?" Aunt Margaret's voice cracked. Did she say general? I returned the salute automatically, my mind already shifting into operational mode. "What's the situation?" "Major?" "Ma'am, there's been an incident at the Syrian border. General Morrison needs you at the Pentagon immediately. The Security Council is convening in 2 hours. Syrian border? My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. How bad? Classified, ma'am, but the Joint Chiefs are assembling. The Secretary of Defense specifically requested your presence. I nodded. Give me 2 minutes to get my things. Of course, ma'am. I'll prep the bird. As Major Hayes jogged back to the helicopter, I turned to face my family. The expressions ranged from shock to disbelief to, on Uncle Robert's face, something that might have been fear. You're a general? Lisa breathed. Why didn't you say anything? It didn't seem relevant, I said, already moving toward my car to grab my go bag. Always prepared. Some habits died hard. Not relevant? Uncle David spluttered. You let us think. You assumed I was a failure. The words came out sharper than intended. A waste of potential, I believe, was the phrase. Uncle Robert stepped forward, his face flushed. Now hold on. You can't just leave. We're your family. We deserve an explanation. I paused, looking at the uncle who'd dismissed me moments ago, who'd made me stand in the back of the family photo like an afterthought. Where was this concern for family for the last 20 years? The Blackhawks' engines roared back to life. I had minutes, maybe less. Sarah, Uncle Thomas caught my arm as I passed. Whatever's happening, be safe. It was the first genuine concern any of them had shown all day. I squeezed his shoulder. I'll try. I jogged across the lawn, my mind already shifting from family drama to whatever crisis awaited. As I reached the helicopter, I turned back one last time. They all stood there, the successful uncles, the accomplished cousins, the family that had written me off, watching as I climbed aboard. Major Hayes handed me a tablet as we lifted off. Initial briefing, ma'am. It's worse than we thought. I scanned the classified report, my stomach dropping. 3 missing Marines, a potential international incident, and my specific expertise needed. The family reunion, the snubs, the years of judgment, it all faded to background noise. As the Black Hawk banked east toward Washington, I caught a glimpse of my family below, still standing in the yard, looking up. For 28 years, they'd ignored me, dismissed my choices, acted like I didn't exist. Now they knew exactly who I'd become, and I had work to do. The Pentagon's corridors buzzed with controlled chaos as I strode through the familiar halls, Major Hayes keeping pace beside me. The transition from family barbecue to national security crisis had taken less than 30 minutes, but my mind had already compartmentalized the afternoon's humiliation. Personal drama could wait. American lives hung in the balance. General Morrison's in the tank with the Joint Chiefs, Hayes briefed me as we walked. CIA Director Hoffman just arrived, along with State Department representatives. The tank, the Joint Chiefs' secure conference room. Whatever had happened, it was serious enough to mobilize the entire national security apparatus on a Saturday evening. The 3 Marines, I said, scanning the classified report on my tablet as we moved. Lieutenant Rodriguez's squad? Yes, ma'am. They were conducting a routine patrol along the Syrian-Turkish border when they disappeared. Last contact was 800 local time. I knew Rodriguez. Solid Marine, 2 tours in Afghanistan, commendations for valor. Not the type to go missing without cause. We reached the security checkpoint outside the conference room. Even with my credentials, the process was thorough. Biometric scans, badge verification, the works. As we waited, my phone vibrated with text messages. A glance showed multiple notifications from family members I hadn't heard from in years. I silenced it without reading them. General Brennan. The security officer nodded. They're waiting for you. The heavy door opened to reveal a room full of stars, eagles, and grim faces. General Morrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, looked up from the head of the table. Sarah, thank God you're here. I'd worked with Morrison for 15 years, through Iraq, Afghanistan, and countless other operations. The worry in his eyes told me everything I needed to know about the severity of the situation. Apologies for the dramatic extraction, he continued as I took my seat, but we need your expertise. My extraction was nothing compared to what Rodriguez and his men might be facing, I replied, nodding to the others at the table. Admiral Chen, General Williams, CIA Director Hoffman, I'd worked with them all, earned their respect through years of successful operations. Let's get you up to speed. Morrison activated the wall display. A map appeared showing the Syrian-Turkish border region, with a red zone marked near the town of Tal Abyad. At 800 hours, Lieutenant Rodriguez's squad was conducting a routine patrol in coordination with Turkish forces. They were investigating reports of ISIS remnants moving through the area. ISIS was supposedly cleared from that region 6 months ago, I noted. That's what we thought, Director Hoffman interjected. But intelligence suggests a new cell has been operating across the border. Small, mobile, well-funded. Morrison clicked to the next slide. Satellite imagery of a compound. Rodriguez's last transmission indicated they were investigating this structure. Then nothing. No distress signal, no firefight sounds. They just vanished. Jamming equipment? I suggested. Possibly. But here's where it gets complicated. Morrison's expression darkened. 2 hours after they disappeared, we received this. A video filled the screen. Grainy handheld footage showed 3 Marines, Rodriguez and 2 others, kneeling in what appeared to be a concrete room. Armed men in black masks stood behind them. My stomach tightened, recognizing the setup all too well. But something was off. I leaned forward, studying the footage. Pause it there. Morrison froze the frame. I stood, approaching the screen, examining every detail. What do you see? Admiral Chen asked. The weapons. Those aren't standard ISIS armaments. That's Russian hardware, specifically AK-12s that were only distributed to Special Forces units. I traced a finger along the screen. And look at their tactical positioning. This isn't amateur hour. These men have formal military training. Russians? General Williams frowned. In Syria? Not necessarily Russian nationals, I clarified, returning to my seat, but someone with access to their equipment and training. Could be mercenaries, could be a proxy force. Director Hoffman pulled up another file. There's more. The demand video was routed through multiple servers, but NSA traced the origin point to here. He indicated a location 50 miles from where the Marines disappeared, deep in Syrian territory, controlled by Assad forces. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Syrian government forces were involved, this wasn't just a terrorist incident. It was a potential act of war. What are they demanding? I asked. That's just it, Morrison said. Nothing. No ransom, no prisoner exchange, no political demands. Just the video proving they have our men. A trap. My instincts screamed it, honed by decades of similar situations. They're baiting us. They want us to attempt a rescue. My thoughts exactly, Morrison agreed. Which is why I pulled you out of retirement. You ran 17 successful hostage rescues during your tenure with JSOC, including the Mazari incident, I finished. 3 years ago, outside Kandahar, 4 captured aid workers, a compound full of Taliban fighters, and intel suggesting the entire thing was designed to draw in American forces. We'd gotten them out, but it had required thinking 3 moves ahead of an enemy who knew our playbook. So what's your assessment? Admiral Chen asked. I studied the map, the compound, the surrounding terrain, pieces of a puzzle arranging themselves in my mind. They've had 6 hours to move them. Rodriguez and his men aren't in that compound anymore. This video was filmed elsewhere and uploaded from the compound to throw us off. How can you be sure? Look at the shadows in the video. I had Morrison replay it. Based on the angle, this was filmed around noon, but the upload came at 1400 hours. 2-hour gap. Enough time to relocate. So where are they? Hoffman pressed. I turned to the map, tracing routes, considering logistics. They'll want to keep them mobile but accessible. Close enough to Syrian government protection, but far enough to maintain deniability. My finger stopped at a cluster of buildings 20 miles east. Here, old Soviet-era military facility. Officially abandoned, but satellite shows recent activity. Morrison pulled up real-time imagery. Sure enough, vehicles that hadn't been there this morning, heat signatures suggesting occupation. It could be a coincidence, Williams said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. In our business, there are no coincidences, I replied. They're playing a longer game here. This isn't about 3 Marines. It's about drawing us into something bigger. The president wants options by 2100 hours, Morrison said. State is pushing for diplomatic channels, but every hour we waste is another hour they have to fortify positions or move our people again, I finished. We need a surgical strike, quick and precise. Get in, get our men, get out before anyone knows we were there. Can it be done? Chen asked. I'd run similar operations with less intel and worse odds, but those were with teams I'd trained, resources I controlled. Now I was technically a civilian, consulting on a crisis. I'll need a team, I said. Delta or SEAL Team 6, air support from the 160th SOAR, and someone on the ground. We need eyes on that facility before we commit. I can have assets in place within 4 hours, Hoffman offered. Make it 2, I countered. And I want satellite surveillance on every route out of that facility. If they move, we need to know immediately. Morrison looked around the table. All in favor of General Brennan's approach? Unanimous agreement. Even in retirement, the trust I'd earned through years of successful operations still carried weight. Sarah, Morrison caught my arm as the others began coordinating resources. I need to ask, are you ready for this? You've been out for what, a month? 6 weeks, I corrected. And yes, I'm ready. He studied me carefully. This could go sideways fast. If Syrian forces are involved, if Russia decides to make a statement, then we'll adapt like we always do. I met his gaze steadily. Those are our Marines out there. I'm not leaving them behind. A knock interrupted us. An aide entered, looking harried. General Morrison, sir. CNN is reporting the kidnapping. Someone leaked the video. Morrison's face darkened. How the hell? Never mind. Sarah, this just became a public relations nightmare on top of everything else. My phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. Lisa had sent a link to a news article. Hero General called from family reunion to save captured Marines. The story was already spreading, probably fed by someone at the reunion who'd captured the helicopter landing on their phone. Sir, Major Hayes appeared at the door. SEAL Team 6 is prepping for deployment. They're requesting General Brennan's input on the tactical plan. I pocketed my phone. The family drama, their shocked faces, their years of dismissal, none of it mattered now. 3 Marines were counting on me to bring them home. On my way, I told Hayes, then turned back to Morrison. We'll get them back. I know you will. That's why I called you. The next 2 hours blurred together in a symphony of controlled chaos. The SEAL Team commander, Lieutenant Commander Jake Matthews, was someone I'd worked with before. Competent, aggressive, smart. We pored over satellite imagery, identifying entry points, escape routes, potential defensive positions. The facility has 3 main buildings, I explained to the assembled team. Intel suggests they'll keep the prisoners in the eastern structure. Easiest to defend, limited access points. Guard positions? Matthews asked. Thermal imaging shows 12 to 15 hostiles, but assume double that. They're too smart not to have reserves hidden. I marked positions on the tactical display. Your biggest challenge will be here, this choke point between buildings. It's a natural kill zone. Recommendations? Create a diversion here. I indicated the western building. Small explosion, enough to draw attention. While they respond, your main force enters from the north. Quick and violent, shock and speed are your advantages. The team absorbed every detail, asking pointed questions, refining the plan. These were the best of the best, and it showed. By 20-30 hours, we had a workable strategy. General Brennan, Director Hoffman approached as the SEALs headed to their transport. Our asset is in position, live feed coming online now. The main screen flickered to life, showing grainy night vision footage of the target facility. My breath caught. There was definitely activity. Guards patrolling, vehicles positioned for quick escape. Can your asset confirm the Marines are there? I asked. Working on it. Wait. Hoffman pressed his earpiece. Movement. Eastern building, 2nd floor. 3 individuals under guard being moved to. They're loading them into a vehicle. My blood ran cold. They're moving them. Abort the mission. Negative, Morrison interrupted. We can't abort now. Matthews's team is already airborne. I grabbed the radio. Viper 6, this is Overlord. Be advised, packages are mobile. Repeat, packages are mobile. Matthews' voice crackled back. Copy, Overlord. ETA to target 12 minutes. Can you track the vehicle? All eyes turned to the screen as a covered truck pulled away from the facility, heading east. Stay on that vehicle, I ordered the surveillance team. My mind raced through possibilities. The timing was too convenient. They knew we were coming. But how? There, Hoffman pointed. They're stopping. Looks like another compound. 5 clicks east. I studied the new location. Smaller, more isolated, surrounded by rough terrain. Actually a better defensive position than the original target. It's a shell game, I realized. They're moving them between sites to confuse us. Viper 6, can you redirect? Negative. Not enough fuel for multiple insertions. Decision time. Every instinct screamed that this was orchestrated, that we were being led. But 3 Marines' lives hung in the balance. Viper 6, proceed to secondary target. We'll guide you in. I turned to Morrison. I need another team ready as backup. If this goes wrong, already mobilizing, he assured me. Sarah, are you sure about this? No, I wasn't. But certainty was a luxury we couldn't afford. Those Marines have been captive for 12 hours. Every minute increases the chance they'll be moved again or worse. We go now. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and quiet radio chatter. On screen, Matthews' team approached the new target, invisible death in the darkness. The vehicle that had transported the Marines was still there, engine running. Another sign this might be temporary. Overlord Viper 6, in position. Confirm execute. I looked at Morrison. He nodded. Viper 6, Overlord. You are cleared hot. Bring them home. The assault unfolded with lethal precision. Night vision footage showed SEALs flowing over walls like shadows, neutralizing guards before they could raise an alarm. No explosions, no dramatic firefights, just swift professional violence. Eastern building secured, Matthews reported. Moving to contact. Multiple hostiles, western approach. Gunfire erupted on the feed. The guards had been waiting, hidden just as I'd feared. The SEALs responded with disciplined fire. But they were exposed, caught between buildings. Where's that backup? I demanded. 15 minutes out, someone replied. Too long. On screen, Matthews's team was pinned down, taking fire from multiple positions. This was exactly what the enemy had wanted. American forces committed, vulnerable, in Syrian territory. Viper 6 recommend immediate extraction, I said. Negative, Overlord. We're not leaving without the packages. Stubborn heroism, admirable but potentially fatal. I turned to Hoffman. Do we have any air assets in range? Checking. Yes. Predator drone armed with Hellfires. But if we engage, it'll be an act of war, Morrison finished. Syrian territory, possibly Syrian forces. On screen, one of the SEALs went down, dragged to cover by teammates. Time slowed as I weighed options, calculated risks, considered consequences that would ripple far beyond this moment. General, Hayes handed me a phone. It's the president. Of course it was. I took the phone, watching Matthews's team fight for their lives. General Brennan, the president's voice was tense. I'm watching the feed. What's your recommendation? Engage the Predator, sir. We can't leave them there. The diplomatic fallout will be manageable compared to losing an entire SEAL team and 3 Marines. Sir, I've run operations like this for 2 decades. Sometimes you have to act and deal with consequences later. A pause. On screen, the SEALs were running low on ammunition, their perimeter shrinking. Do it, the president ordered. Bring them all home. I handed the phone back and turned to the weapons officer. Light them up. The Predator's Hellfire missiles struck with surgical precision, eliminating hostile positions while avoiding the buildings where our people might be. The pressure on Matthews's team eased immediately. Moving to target building, Matthews reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. Breaching now. The next 90 seconds felt like hours. Radio silence as the team cleared rooms, searching for Rodriguez and his men. Then, Overlord, Viper 6. Packages secured. 3 souls, alive but injured, moving to extract. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by renewed tension. They still had to get out. Roger, Viper 6. Fast movers inbound for cover. Get to the LZ. The extraction was textbook. SEALs carrying wounded Marines, leapfrogging to their helicopter while F-16s screamed overhead, discouraging pursuit. Within minutes, they were airborne, racing toward Turkish airspace and safety. Viper 6 is clear, someone announced. No casualties on our side beyond minor wounds. The Marines are stable. The room erupted in restrained celebration. Handshakes, relieved sighs, the release of tension that comes with successful mission completion. But I remained focused on the screen, watching the compound they'd left behind. Director Hoffman, I said quietly, can your asset confirm who we were fighting? He made a call, listened, then his face paled. Syrian Special Forces, definitely, with Russian advisors. So it had been a trap, just not the kind we'd expected. Not to kill Americans, but to test our response, to see how far we'd go. And we'd shown them. Morrison appeared at my shoulder. Outstanding work, Sarah. You saved those men. The team saved them. I just provided guidance. Don't minimize your role. We needed you, and you delivered. He paused. The president wants to thank you personally. And the press, they're calling you a hero. Hero. The word felt strange after years of operating in shadows, of classified missions the public would never know about. Now, thrust into the spotlight by circumstance and a leaked video. My phone had been buzzing constantly. Finally, I checked it. Dozens of messages from family members I hadn't heard from in years. Uncle Robert's name appeared multiple times, along with words like proud and sorry and misunderstood. Too little, too late. What now? I asked Morrison. Debrief with State and CIA. Press conference at 0800. The public wants to see the general who saved our Marines. He smiled grimly. Welcome to the spotlight, Sarah. Hope you're ready for it. Ready? I'd faced enemy fire, made life and death decisions, carried the weight of command for nearly 3 decades. But facing the media, dealing with sudden fame, navigating family members who'd ignored me until I became useful to their social standing, that might be the hardest mission yet. As I prepared for the intelligence debrief, one thought kept nagging at me. The enemy had known we were coming. The timing, the relocations, the ambush, all suggested a leak. Someone had compromised the operation, and finding out who might be just as important as the rescue itself.